So what if everything we thought we knew about a nation's power, GDP, military strength, was just wrong? Well, a brand new global index is suggesting exactly that. And honestly, its results are completely redrawing the map of the world as we know it. Let's dig into the index that's literally rewriting our idea of global influence. Okay, let's just jump right into the results because they are, and I'm not exaggerating, absolutely stunning. The first ever Responsible Nations Index for 2026 basically takes the world order we're all used to and flips it completely on its head. The rankings are not what you'd expect at all. And this is where it gets wild. The United States ranks 66th, China 68th. But then you look at India, and it's soaring up at a remarkable 16th place. That's ahead of several G7 economies and every single one of the other BRICS nations. I mean, it's a scoreboard that looks like it's from some kind of alternate universe, right? Seeing those numbers just makes you stop and ask a huge question. What in the world is this index even measuring? How is it even possible for the planet's traditional superpowers to rank so low, while an emerging economy like India rockets into the top tier? To get to the bottom of it, we have to understand the fundamental problem this new index was created to solve. It's really a direct challenge to all the old, tired ways of measuring what makes a nation great in the first place. For decades, we've been relying on these metrics that tell a very specific, and you could argue, a very biased story. I mean, think about it. GDP, it measures wealth, sure, but it says nothing about how that wealth is shared or the damage that's being done to our planet. Military rankings, they celebrate the power to destroy, not the ability to build peace. This new index is basically saying, hey, these old yardsticks are fundamentally broken. So in response to that problem, a group of Indian institutions came together to create the Responsible Nations Index, or the RNI. And its core idea is this massive shift in thinking, judging a nation not on its power to dominate others, but on its capacity to actually care for its own people, for the planet, and for the global community. This whole philosophy was just perfectly summed up at the index's launch. The former Indian president, Ram Nath Kovind, said the goal isn't just another competitive ranking. Instead, he called it a mirror of morality, a tool for self-reflection that asks every single nation to look at itself and ask, are we living up to our responsibility? So you might be wondering, how on earth do you put a number on a concept as big and frankly as profound as responsibility? Well, the RNI's creators built this incredibly comprehensive, multi-layered framework to do just that, and it's all built on a really clear set of pillars and dimensions. The whole thing really rests on these three core pillars. First, there's internal responsibility. Basically, how well does a country take care of its own citizens? Second, environmental responsibility. How good of a steward is it for the planet? And third, external responsibility. How does it act on the world stage? And then those three big pillars are broken down into 7 very specific dimensions. And these cover pretty much everything from quality of life and social justice all the way to environmental protection and a commitment to peace. It's a really holistic way of looking at things, which means a country can't just score high because it's rich or, hide an aggressive foreign policy behind a strong economy. All right, so now that we know how they're measuring things, let's get back to those results and see how this all builds up to that completely new global hierarchy we saw at the start. I mean, the top of this list paints a fascinating picture of what the RNI really values. So the top 10 is just dominated by these smaller, stable, well-governed nations, mostly from Europe, that score really high on things like social justice and environmental care. But check this out. At number 1 is Singapore. And that result really highlights how much the index focuses on social order and efficiency as key parts of being a responsible nation. But here, this is maybe the most provocative finding of all, what they call the Great Power Paradox. The USA, China, and Russia, they all rank in the bottom half of the index. So why? Well, it's because the RNI actually penalizes things like military interventions, high per capita carbon emissions, and big internal social challenges. It really exposes the hidden costs of being a superpower. And all of this brings us back to the biggest surprise in the rankings, which is India's incredibly high placement. The report itself actually calls it a breakout moment. I mean, placing 16th in the entire world puts India firmly in that top tier, higher than established powers like France, the UK, and Japan. It's a score that could really redefine India's place in the world. So the big question is, how did it get there? India's performance is actually a perfect case study for how this RNI methodology works. A massive driver of its score is how well it did on that external responsibility pillar. The index rewards its long history as a top contributor to UN peacekeeping missions, its vaccine Maitri program, which supplied vaccines all over the globe, and its consistent foreign policy of non-aggression.
The RNI also puts a lot of value on India's commitment to environmental sustainability. Its huge push into solar power, its leadership on sustainable lifestyles, and the fact that its per capita emissions are still relatively low compared to other big economies, all of that helped boost its score. And then finally, on the internal front, the index really highlights India's unique approach to welfare. Its digital public infrastructure, which makes it possible to send direct benefit transfers to hundreds of millions of people, is seen as a really responsible way to deliver social security on an absolutely massive scale.
So here's the most crucial point to take away from all this. The RNI isn't just some academic paper. It's actually a powerful tool in a much larger global conversation about power, about values, and about who gets to define what success even looks like.
For years, countries in the global south have been ranked by Western indices on things like freedom or democracy, but the RNI provides a data-driven counterargument. It lets a country like India turn around and say, hey, we're not failing. You're just measuring us by the wrong yardstick. If you measure us by responsibility, we excel.
Ultimately, the index leaves us with this one incredibly powerful idea from the report itself. Is a nation truly developed if it's rich but destroys the planet? Is it strong if it has a powerful army but neglects its own people? The RNI's answer to that is a very clear and simple no. And now it really leaves us with one final thought. In a world that's facing climate change, inequality, and conflict, this new index forces us to ask a vital question. What is the true measure of a nation's greatness? Is it raw power or is it responsibility?